picture a quiet village hiding a chilling secret. 30 years ago, Lord Ashford vanished, his priceless jewels locked in a manor study, never to be found. Now, screams echo from the manor's tower, and a shady stranger, Dr. Crane, moves in. Only Miss Marple, a sharp-eyed old lady with a knack for secrets, can unravel the truth. With young Lucy's help, she uncovers hidden passages, a chained prisoner, and a greedy plot tied to the past. In a tense showdown, Miss Marple traps the villain, saves a life, and restores peace to St. Mary Mead. Get ready for a mystery where every whisper hides a clue. Chapter 1. The Whisper in St. Mary Mead. The little village of St. Mary Mead was as quiet as a sleeping cat. Its small houses, with their neat gardens and stone walls, sat under a soft autumn sun. Leaves, red and gold, fell slowly from old trees, carpeting the paths where villagers walked. The air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke, and the days grew shorter, like a story winding down. In this cosy place, where everyone knew everyone else's business, Miss Jane Marple lived in a cottage with roses climbing up its walls. She was an old lady, small and gentle-looking, with white hair tied in a bun, and eyes that sparkled like a child's. But those eyes missed nothing. They saw the world like a puzzle, each piece a person, a word, or a glance. Miss Marple sat in her garden that morning, knitting a soft pink shawl. Her needles clicked in a steady rhythm, like a clock ticking. She wore a simple grey dress and a wool cardigan, her hands moving fast despite her age. The garden was her favourite spot, with its tidy flower beds and a wooden bench under an apple tree. From there she could see the village lane, where people passed by, chatting or hurrying to the shops. She liked to listen. Not to pry, mind you, but because voices carried stories, and stories carried secrets. The day before, at the post office, she'd heard something curious. Mrs. Price, the postmistress, had leaned over the counter, her voice low but not low enough. "A stranger's come to town," she'd said to Mrs. Baker, who ran the bakery. "Rented the old manor on the hill. Nobody knows who he is or what he wants." Mrs. Baker had gasped, her flour-dusted hands clutching a letter. The manor? That gloomy place? Why, it's been empty since, well, you know. Mrs. Price had nodded, her lips tight. "Since Lord Ashford vanished. 30 years ago, wasn't it? Not a soul's lived there since." Miss Marple had stood by the counter, sorting her stamps, her face calm, but her ears wide open. She knew the story of Lord Reginald Ashford. Everyone in St. Mary Mead did. He'd been a rich man, with a sharp temper and a love for shiny things, jewels mostly. His manor, a big stone house with tall windows and a tower, sat on a hill overlooking the village. It was grand once, but creepy, with ivy choking its walls and bats flitting about at night. Lord Ashford had lived there alone, except for a few servants. Then, one stormy night, he was gone. Poof, like smoke. His study, where he kept his precious jewels, was locked tight from the inside. The police broke in, but found nothing. No body, no jewels, no clues. The jewels, worth a king's fortune, were never seen again. The case went cold, and the manor stayed empty, its gates rusted, its rooms silent. Now someone new was there, a stranger. Miss Marple's needles paused as she thought about it. Strangers in St. Mary Mead were rare. like snow in summer. They brought change, and change brought questions. Who was this man? Why choose a crumbling old house with such a dark past? She tilted her head, watching a sparrow hop across her lawn. People, she knew, were never just one thing. They had layers like an onion, and peeling them back was her specialty. She was still thinking when the garden gate squeaked. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path, quick and uneven. Miss Marple looked up to see Lucy Hale, the vicar's daughter, running toward her. Lucy was 16, with freckles across her nose and brown curls bouncing as she moved. Her blue eyes were wide, her cheeks pink from the chilly air. She wore a green coat and a scarf that trailed behind her like a flag. "Miss Marple," Lucy called, stopping short and catching her breath. "Oh, Miss Marple, something's wrong. I saw something last night, something awful." Her voice was high, trembling like a leaf in the wind. Miss Marple set her knitting in her lap. "Now, Lucy dear, sit down and tell me slowly. What's got you so upset?" She patted the bench beside her, her voice soft but firm, like a mother calming a scared child. Lucy plopped onto the bench, her hands twisting together. "It's the manor," she said. "Last night I was walking home from choir practice. It was dark, past 9. I took the shortcut by the hill, near the manor's gates. I wasn't thinking anything of it, honest, but then I saw lights, up in the tower, flickering like candles, and then—" She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I heard screams, not loud, but awful, like someone was hurt. I ran home and told Papa, but he said it was just the wind or my imagination. But it wasn't, Miss Marple. I know what I heard." Miss Marple's face stayed calm, but her mind was racing. Lights in the tower, screams, a stranger in the manor. She reached out and patted Lucy's hand. "You're a brave girl for telling me," she said, "and I believe you. The wind can play tricks, but screams, well, there's something else. Did you see anyone? A person, maybe, at the gates or in the windows?" Lucy shook her head. "No, just the lights. I was too scared to stay. I kept thinking about Lord Ashford and those stories, about his ghost haunting the place." She shivered, pulling her scarf tighter. Miss Marple smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Ghosts, my dear, are often just stories we tell when we don't understand the truth. But lights and screams? Those are real enough. We'll get to the bottom of this, you and I." Her eyes twinkled, like stars peeking through clouds. Lucy nodded, looking a little less scared. She trusted Miss Marple. Everyone did. The old lady had a way of making things clear, like wiping fog from a window. "Now," Miss Marple said, picking up her knitting again, "tell me more about this stranger. Have you heard anything? The village is buzzing, I'm sure." Lucy bit her lip, thinking. "Not much. Mrs. Price said he's called Dr. Victor Crane. He's a scholar or something, here to study old books. He keeps to himself, doesn't talk to anyone. Tom Barrow, the groundskeeper, is working for him, fixing up the manor. But people say Dr. Crane's odd, always wearing a long black coat, even in the daytime." Miss Marple's needles clicked, faster. Tom Barrow. She knew him, or knew of him. A gruff man, tall and broad, with a limp from an old injury. He'd worked for Lord Ashford years ago, tending the manor's gardens. After Ashford vanished, Tom stayed in the village, doing odd jobs. He was quiet, but there was a hardness in him, like a stone that wouldn't budge, and now he was back at the manor with this Dr. Crane. Interesting. "Thank you, Lucy," Miss Marple said. "You've been very helpful. Now, run along and don't worry. I'll think this over, and if you hear or see anything else, come straight. To me, all right?" Lucy nodded, standing up. "I will, Miss Marple, thank you." She hesitated, then added, "You'll be careful, won't you? The manor, it's creepy. And those screams." Her voice trailed off. Miss Marple chuckled softly. "I'm always careful, dear. Off you go." Lucy smiled a bit shyly and hurried back to the gate, her scarf flapping. When she was gone, Miss Marple leaned back, her knitting still for a moment. The garden was quiet again, but her thoughts were loud. She pictured the manor, its cold stone walls and dark windows. She remembered the stories from 30 years ago, how the police had searched every room, how the study's lock was unbreakable, how the jewels were gone. Lord Ashford's disappearance was a knot, tight and tangled, and no one had pulled the right thread to loosen it. Until now, maybe. She stood, brushing a leaf from her cardigan, and went inside her cottage. It was a cosy place, with lace curtains, a ticking clock, and shelves full of books. On a small table sat a teapot and a cup, still warm from her morning tea. She poured another, the steam curling up like a question mark. As she sipped, she thought about Dr. Crane. "A scholar," Lucy said, "studying old books. But why the manor? There were libraries in London, full of dusty pages. Why come to a village, to a house with such a grim past? And those screams Lucy heard, were they real? Or was the girl's imagination running wild? Miss Marple didn't think so. Lucy was sensible, not prone to flights of fancy. She set her cup down and walked to her window, looking out at the village. The manor loomed on its hill, half hidden by trees. She could just see its tower, grey against the sky. Lights in the tower. Screams. Her fingers tapped the windowsill. Something was happening up there. Something hidden. And Dr. Crane was at the centre of it, she was sure. Miss Marple wasn't one for rushing. She liked to think, to let ideas settle like tea leaves in a pot, but she also knew when to act. She'd visit the manor, she decided. Not today. Too soon. Tomorrow, perhaps, with a good excuse. A basket of apples from her garden, maybe, to welcome the new neighbour. People let their guard down when you brought gifts. They talked, and talking was what she needed. She went back to her knitting, but her mind stayed on the manor. She thought of Tom Barrow, with his limp and his hard eyes. Had he known something back then, when Ashford vanished? Servants saw things, heard things. And what about the jewels? They were the heart of the mystery, weren't they? Stolen, some said. Hidden, others thought. Miss Marple wondered if they were still in the manor, locked away in that study or somewhere else. The afternoon passed quietly. Villagers walked by, waving to Miss Marple as she sat by her window. She waved back, her smile warm, but her thoughts far away. She remembered other mysteries she'd solved, small ones mostly. A missing brooch, a stolen bicycle, a letter sent to the wrong person. But this was different, bigger, darker, the kind of puzzle that could change St. Mary Mead, or break it. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange, Miss Marple made a plan. She'd start with the manor, But she'd also talk to Mrs. Price. The postmistress knew everyone's secrets, or at least their mail. She might have seen something, letters to or from Dr. Crane, maybe. And Lucy, she'd keep the girl close. Young eyes were sharp, and Lucy was eager to help. Miss Marple finished, her shawl folding it neatly. The cottage was warm, the fire crackling in the hearth. She stood, stretching her arms, and looked out at the manor one last time. Its shadows stretched across the hill, long and dark. A mystery was waiting, she thought, a big one, and she, Jane Marple, would unravel it thread by thread. She smiled to herself, a quiet, determined smile. Then she turned off the lamp and went to bed, her mind already spinning with tomorrow's plans. Chapter 2. The Locked Study. The morning sun peeked through the lace curtains of Miss Jane Marple's cottage, casting soft patterns on the wooden floor. She was up early, as always, her small frame wrapped in a wool shawl against the autumn chill. The kettle whistled on the stove, and the smell of fresh tea filled the kitchen. She poured a cup, her hands steady, her mind already turning over yesterday's news. Lucy's tale of lights and screams at the manor, the stranger Dr. Crane, and the old mystery of Lord Ashford's disappearance. Today, she'd take the first step to unravel it. She'd visit the manor herself. Miss Marple wasn't one for rushing into things. She liked to plan, to think things through like a gardener plotting a flower bed. But she also knew people talked more when you caught them off guard. A friendly visit with a basket of apples from her garden would do nicely. Nobody turned away a kind old lady with a gift, not even a secretive scholar like Dr. Victor Crane. She dressed in her usual grey skirt and cardigan, pinning her white hair neatly. Then she went to her garden, where the apple tree sagged with ripe fruit. She picked the best ones, red and shiny with no bruises, and tucked them into a wicker basket. As she worked, she thought about the manor. It was a grim place, with its stone walls and creaky gates. 30 years ago, Lord Ashford had vanished from his study. A room locked tight, with no way in or out. The police had been stumped, and the jewels, sparkling gems worth a fortune, were gone. Now Dr. Crane was there, stirring up old ghosts. Miss Marple's lips pursed. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in secrets, and the manor was full of them. Basket in hand, she locked her cottage and set off. The village of St. Mary Mead was waking up. Shopkeepers swept their steps, and children ran to school, their laughter echoing. Miss Marple nodded to Mrs. Baker, who was setting out fresh loaves in her bakery window. "Fine morning, isn't it?" she called. Mrs. Baker smiled, but her eyes darted toward the hill where the manor loomed. The whole village was buzzing about Dr. Crane, Miss Marple knew. Gossip was like wildfire here, quick to spread, hard to stop. The path to the manor wound, up the hill past fields of grazing sheep and hedges thick with berries. The air was crisp, smelling of leaves and earth. Miss Marple walked slowly, her sensible shoes crunching on gravel. She wasn't in a hurry. Hurrying made you miss things, and she wanted to see everything. The manor's rusted gates, the overgrown lawn, the tower where Lucy had seen lights. As she climbed, the manor came into view, its grey stone walls cold even in the sunlight. Ivy clung to it like a spider's web, and the windows stared down, dark and empty. The tower jutted up, its pointed roof like a witch's hat. Miss Marple's, Eyes narrowed. Somewhere in that house was the answer to Lucy's screams. At the gate, she paused. The iron was heavy, its hinges squeaking as she pushed it open. The driveway was choked with weeds, and the fountain in the courtyard was dry, its stone cherubs cracked. She walked to the front door, a massive slab of oak carved with vines. Taking a deep breath, she knocked, the sound echoing inside. For a moment there was silence. Then footsteps, slow, careful, came closer. The door creaked open, and there stood Dr. Victor Crane. He was a thin man, not tall, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like a hawk's. His hair was dark, streaked with grey, and he wore a black coat, just as Lucy had said. His face was pale, almost waxy, and his lips twitched into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning," he said, his voice smooth but guarded. "May I help you?" Miss Marple smiled, holding up her basket. "I'm Jane Marple, from the village," she said, her tone warm. "I heard we had a new neighbour, so I brought some apples from my garden. A little welcome, you might say." Dr. Crane blinked, clearly surprised. He hesitated, then stepped back. "That's kind of you, Miss Marple. Please, come in." He took the basket, his fingers brushing the apples. Miss Marple noted his hands, long and thin, with a slight tremble. Nervous, she thought, or hiding something. The manor's hall was dim, smelling of dust and old wood. The floor was marble, cracked in places, and the walls were lined with portraits of stern men and women in old-fashioned clothes. Their eyes seemed to follow her, making her skin prickle. A chandelier hung above, its crystals dull with cobwebs. Dr. Crane led her to a sitting room, where a single lamp glowed. The furniture was heavy, covered in faded velvet, and books were stacked on every table. Miss Marple's sharp eyes took it all in. The papers scattered on a desk, the ink stains on Crane's fingers, the way he kept glancing at the door. "Sit, please," he said, pointing to a chair. "Would you like tea?" His politeness was stiff like a schoolboy reciting lines. "Oh, no, thank you," Miss Marple said, settling into the chair. "I won't stay long. I just wanted to meet you. The village is small, you see, and new faces are quite the event." She smiled again, watching his face. Crane sat across from her, his hands folded tightly. "I'm grateful for the welcome," he said. "I'm here for research, you know. Old manuscripts, local history. The manor has a rich past." His eyes flicked to the window, then back to her. "Indeed it does," Miss Marple said, her voice light. "Lord Ashford's time, for one. Such a sad story, his disappearance. You must have heard it." She tilted her head, watching him closely. Crane's smile tightened. "Yes, a tragedy, but long ago. I'm more interested in older things, medieval records, that sort of thing." He stood suddenly, as if eager to end the talk. "Thank you for the apples, Miss Marple. I should get back to work." She rose, smoothing her skirt. "Of course, I'll let you be." But as they walked to the hall, she slowed, her eyes catching something. A heavy oak door set deep in the wall. It was different from the others, with a brass lock that gleamed, untouched by dust. The study, she thought. The locked room where Ashford vanished. She stopped, pretending to admire a portrait. "What a fine house," she said. "So many rooms. Do you use them all?" Crane's jaw tightened. "Not many," he said. "The study's locked. Too much clutter. I work in the library mostly." He moved toward the front door, clearly wanting her gone. Miss Marple nodded, filing his words away. As they reached the entrance, she saw a man outside, raking leaves. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a limp. Tom Barrow, the groundskeeper. His face was weathered, his eyes hard as flint. He glanced at her, then at Crane, and went back to his work. Miss Marple's mind clicked. Tom had been here when Ashford lived. He knew the manor's secrets, maybe better than anyone. "Thank you for your time, Dr. Crane," she said, stepping outside. "Do come to the village sometime. We're a friendly bunch." She smiled, but her eyes were sharp, catching the way. Crane's shoulders relaxed as she left. The gate clanged shut behind her, and she started down the hill, her basket lighter, but her thoughts heavy. Crane was hiding something, she was sure. His trembling hands, his quick answers, his rush to get her out. They all pointed to a man with a secret. And that study door, so clean in a dusty house. Someone had been near it, maybe trying to get in. But why? For the jewels? Or something else? Back in St. Mary Mead, the village was busy now, with carts rattling and dogs barking. Miss Marple went straight to the post office, where Mrs. Price was sorting letters behind the counter. She was a round woman, with sharp eyes and a tongue that loved to wag. "Miss Marple," she called, "what brings you here? Not more stamps, surely?" Miss Marple chuckled. "Just a chat, Mrs. Price. I've been to the manor, you know. Met Dr. Crane. A quiet man, isn't he?" Mrs. Price leaned forward, her voice low. "Quiet as a mouse and twice as sneaky. He's been here a week, and barely a word to anyone. Tom Barrow's working for him, though, and Tom's no better. Grumpy as ever, that one. Says the manor's a mess, but Crane pays well." Miss Marple nodded, her face thoughtful. "Tom worked for Lord Ashford, didn't he? Before, well, you know." Mrs. Price's eyes gleamed. "Oh, yes. He was the gardener then. Stayed on till the police gave up. Some say he was owed wages when Ashford vanished. Left him bitter, it did. He's got no love for that house, but money talks, doesn't it?" "Indeed it does," Miss Marple said. She bought a postcard, just to keep things friendly, and left, her mind buzzing. Tom Barrow, bitter and broke, back at the manor with a stranger. And Crane, with his books and his locked study. The pieces were starting to fit, but the picture was still blurry. She walked home, the village settling into its afternoon rhythm. Children played in the square, and the vicar waved from his garden. Miss Marple waved back, but her thoughts were on Lucy. The girl's story, lights in the tower, screams in the night, kept circling in her head. Were they real? Or was Lucy young and eager, imagining things? Miss Marple didn't think so. Lucy was steady like her father, the vicar. If she heard screams, something was wrong. At her cottage, she set the kettle on and sat by the window, looking up at the manor. The tower was just visible, its windows black. She thought of the study, with its gleaming lock. 30 years ago, the police had broken in, finding nothing. No Ashford, no jewels. But locks could hide more than rooms. They could hide passages, maybe, or secrets older than the manor itself. She'd heard tales of hidden tunnels, built during wars long past. Could one lead to the tower? Could someone be up there, trapped or hurt? She sipped her tea, her eyes narrowing. Dr. Crane was the key, she was sure. His research, his nervous hands, his quick dismissal of the study. They all pointed to a man, digging for something. The jewels, perhaps, or something Ashford had left behind. And Tom Barrow, with his hard eyes and old grudge, was part of it. Miss Marple didn't know how yet, but she'd find out. She stood brushing crumbs from her skirt. Tomorrow she'd talk to Lucy again, maybe ask her to watch the manor. Young eyes were sharp, and Lucy was eager to help. She'd also visit the vicarage where old newspapers were kept. Articles from Ashford's time might hold clues, names, dates, hints of enemies. And Mrs. Price, with her nose for gossip, would be useful too. Letters, packages, anything Dr. Crane sent or received could tell a story. The sun was dipping now, painting the sky pink. Miss Marple lit her lamp, its glow warm in the cosy room. She picked up her knitting, the needles clicking softly. The manor sat on its hill, silent but heavy, like a book waiting to be opened. She thought of Lucy's screams, Crane's trembling hands, Tom's hard stare. A mystery was unfolding, bigger than any she'd solved before. It was a knot, tight and tricky, but she'd find the loose thread. She always did. She smiled to herself, a quiet, determined smile, and kept knitting, her mind spinning with plans for tomorrow. Chapter 3. The Hidden Clue. The morning in St. Mary Mead was cool and grey, with clouds hanging low like a wool blanket over the village. Miss Jane Marple stood at her kitchen window, sipping tea and watching the world wake up. Her cottage was warm, the fire crackling softly, but her mind was on the manor up the hill. Yesterday's visit to Dr. Victor Crane had left her with questions. His nervous hands, his quick words, and that locked study door, they all pointed to secrets. Then there was Tom Barrow, the groundskeeper, with his hard eyes and old grudge against Lord Ashford, and Lucy Hale's story of lights and screams in the manor's tower kept circling in her head like a stubborn tune. Today, Miss Marple meant to find answers. She set her cup down and pulled on her coat, a sensible brown one that kept out the chill. Her plan was simple but sharp, like a well-aimed dart. She'd enlist Lucy to gather village gossip. Young ears caught things, old ones missed. Then she'd visit the vicarage, where old newspapers were stored in the attic. Articles from 30 years ago, when Lord Ashford vanished, might hold clues. But first, she needed to think. She sat at her small table, her knitting in her lap, and let her mind work. The manor was a puzzle, and every puzzle had a piece that didn't fit. She just had to find it. Miss Marple thought about the study, locked tight all those years ago. The police had broken in, finding no Ashford, no jewels. The jewels, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, were worth a fortune, and their loss was the heart of the mystery. Some said they were stolen, others that Ashford hid them before he vanished. Miss Marple wondered if they were still in the manor, tucked in a secret place. She'd heard tales of hidden passages, built centuries ago when the manor was a stronghold. Could one lead from the study to the tower? Could someone be up there, making those screams Lucy heard? The idea made her fingers pause on her needles. She stood, brushing a crumb from her skirt, and fetched her hat. It was time to move. She locked her cottage and stepped into the village, where the air smelled of damp leaves and baking bread. St. Mary Mead was stirring. Shopkeepers opened there. Doors and children scampered to school, their voices bright. Miss Marple walked to the vicarage, a tidy house next to the church. Lucy lived there with her father, the vicar, a kind man with a bald head and a love for books. Miss Marple knocked, and Lucy answered, her freckled face lighting up. "Miss Marple," Lucy said, pulling the door wide. "I was hoping you'd come. Have you been to the manor again? Did you find anything?" Her blue eyes were wide, her brown curls bouncing. Miss Marple smiled, stepping inside. The vicarage smelled of polish and old paper. "Not yet, dear," she said, "but I've got a job for you. Sit down, and I'll explain." They settled, in the parlour, where a fire burned low. Lucy perched on a chair, eager as a puppy. "I need your help," Miss Marple said, her voice calm but serious. "The village is full of talk about Dr. Crane, and you're good at listening. I want you to find out what people are saying. Anything about Crane, or Tom Barrow, or the manor. Even small things matter. Where Crane goes, what he buys, who he talks to. Can you do that?" Lucy nodded, her cheeks pink with excitement. "Oh, yes, I'll ask around. Mrs. Price, Mrs. Baker, everyone. They talk to me because I'm young, you know. They forget I'm listening." She grinned, and Miss Marple chuckled. Lucy was sharp, just what she needed. "Good girl," Miss Marple said. "But be careful. Don't let anyone know you're snooping. Just listen and come back to me tonight. All right?" "I will," Lucy promised. She hesitated, then added, "Miss Marple, do you think those screams I heard? Do you think someone's in trouble up there?" Miss Marple's eyes softened. "I don't know yet, dear, but I mean to find out. Now, is your father about? I'd like a look at those old newspapers in the attic." Lucy led her to the study, where the vicar was sorting sermon notes. He looked up, his glasses slipping down his nose. "Miss Marple, what a pleasure. What brings you here?" "A bit of history, Mr. Hale," she said, smiling. "I'm curious about Lord Ashford's time. Have you still got those old newspapers upstairs?" The vicar nodded. "Piles of them, gathering dust. You're welcome to look. Lucy, show her the way." Lucy bounced up, and they climbed the narrow attic stairs. The attic was dim, with slanted beams and boxes stacked high. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting shadows. Lucy pulled out a crate labelled 1930s, and they sat on the floor, sorting through brittle papers. Miss Marple's fingers moved carefully, turning yellowed pages. She found what she wanted. Headlines from 30 years ago, bold and black. "Lord Ashford vanishes," one read. "Jewels missing in Manor Mystery," another shouted. She skimmed the stories, her eyes sharp. Ashford had been a wealthy man, private and prickly, with no family but a distant nephew. His jewels, a collection of rare gems, were kept in a safe in his study. The night he disappeared, a storm had raged, and servants heard nothing. The study was locked from the inside, the key still in the lock. When police broke in, the safe was empty, and Ashford was gone. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. The case baffled everyone. Miss Marple read on, noting names. The butler, long dead. A maid, now living in London. And Tom Barrow, the gardener, who'd told police he saw nothing odd. She frowned. Tom was young then, barely 20. He'd stayed in St. Mary Mead after, taking odd jobs. Why stay, she wondered, if Ashford owed him wages, as Mrs. Price said? Was it loyalty or something else? Lucy pointed to a photo in one paper. It showed the manor's study, its heavy oak door splintered by police. "That's the room, isn't it?" she said. "The locked one." Miss Marple nodded. "Yes, dear, and it's still locked from what Dr. Crane says. Funny, isn't it? A room nobody uses, but the lock shines like new." She folded the paper, tucking it under her arm. "Thank you, Lucy. This helps. Now, off you go to listen. I'll see you tonight." Lucy grinned and hurried downstairs, leaving Miss Marple alone in the attic. She sat a moment, thinking. The newspapers confirmed what she knew. The study was the heart of the mystery. But Lucy's screams pointed to the tower. Were they connected? She remembered Crane's trembling hands, his quick dismissal of the study. He was after something, she was sure. The jewels, maybe, or a secret Ashford left behind. She left the vicarage and walked home, the village quiet under the grey sky. At her cottage she made more tea and sat by the fire, the newspaper open on her lap. She read again, slower this time, looking for what wasn't said. The police had searched the manor top to bottom, finding no hidden doors, no tunnels, but old houses like that had tricks, false walls, secret stairs. She'd heard stories of passages built during the Civil War, when the manor hid soldiers. Could one lead to the tower? Could someone be up there, trapped or hiding? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock. It was Lucy, back sooner than expected, her face flushed. "Miss Marple, I found something," she said, stepping inside. "I went to the hardware shop, like you said. Mr. Gibbs, the owner, told me Dr. Crane's been buying tools, chisels, a crowbar, even a hammer. Said it was for fixing up the manor. But Mr. Gibbs thought it was odd. Those aren't gardening tools, are they?" Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "No, dear, they're not. They're for breaking things. Walls, maybe, or locks. Well done, Lucy. Anything else?" Lucy nodded. "Mrs. Baker saw Tom Barrow carrying a heavy sack out of the manor yesterday. She couldn't see what was in it, but he looked sneaky, she said. Kept checking over his shoulder." Miss Marple's needles clicked, though she wasn't knitting. "A sack, you say? And tools? Our Dr. Crane is busy, isn't he? And Tom's helping, whether he wants to or not." She patted Lucy's hand. "You're a star, dear. Now, I've another job for you. Tomorrow, borrow your father's binoculars and meet me at the hill by the manor. We'll watch from a distance, see what we can see. Can you manage that?" Lucy's eyes sparkled. "Yes, I'll be there at dawn. Oh, Miss Marple, this is exciting." She hugged her, then ran off, her scarf trailing. Miss Marple smiled, but her mind was racing. Chisels and crowbars meant Crane was searching, maybe for the jewels, maybe for something else. And Tom's sack. What was he hiding? She thought of the tower, the screams, the locked study. The pieces were there, but they didn't fit yet. She needed to see more. That night she sat by her fire, the manor's shadow long in her thoughts. She pictured Crane, with his sharp eyes and trembling hands, and Tom, with his limp and his grudge. They were tied to the manor's past, she was sure, and to its present. The jewels were part of it, but there was more. Something darker, something that made screams echo in the night. She stood, stretching her arms, and looked out her window. The manor sat on its hill, its tower black against the clouds. Tomorrow she'd watch it with Lucy, looking for movement, for clues. She'd also talk to Mrs. Price again. The postmistress might know if Crane was getting letters or sending them. Every detail mattered, no matter how small. Miss Marple turned off her lamp and went to bed, her mind still spinning. The manor was a knot, tight and tangled, but she was patient. She'd find the loose thread, the one that would unravel it all. As she drifted to sleep, she thought of Lucy's eager face, the newspaper's faded words, and the study's gleaming lock. A mystery was waiting, and she was ready to meet it. Chapter 4. The Midnight Intruder. The moon hung low over St. Mary Mead, a pale sliver casting shadows across the quiet village. Miss Jane Marple sat by her cottage window, her knitting untouched in her lap. The fire had burned to embers, and the clock ticked softly, marking the late hour. Her mind was sharp, piecing together the day's clues. Dr. Victor Crane's tools, chisels and a crowbar, bought for more than fixing shelves. Tom Barrow's sneaky behaviour with a heavy sack, and Lucy Hale's story of screams from the manor's tower. The locked study, where Lord Ashford vanished 30 years ago, was the heart of it all, she was sure. But the tower held secrets too, and tonight Miss Marple meant to uncover them. She'd spent the evening planning with Lucy. The girl, eager and brave, had agreed to a bold idea. A nighttime trip to the manor's grounds. Miss Marple knew it was risky. Sneaking around a creepy old house wasn't for the faint-hearted, but Lucy's sharp eyes and quick feet were perfect for the job. They'd watch the manor, look for signs of Crane or Tom, and check the old well where Tom had been seen digging. Miss Marple suspected the well was more than it seemed. Secrets, she knew, often hid in plain sight. She stood, pulling on her dark coat and a wool scarf. Her sensible shoes were quiet on the floor as she grabbed a small flashlight from a drawer. The cottage was still, the village asleep. She slipped out, locking the door, and met Lucy at the edge of her garden. The girl was bundled in a black jacket, her freckled face pale but determined under a knit cap. She held her father's binoculars, their lenses glinting in the moonlight. "Ready, Miss Marple," Lucy whispered, her breath puffing in the cold air. Miss Marple nodded, her eyes twinkling. "Ready, dear. Stay close and keep quiet. We're just looking, not touching, unless we must." She gave Lucy a reassuring pat, and they set off, their footsteps soft on the damp grass. The path to the manor was dark, lined with gnarled trees that swayed in the breeze. The village houses faded behind them, their windows black. The manor loomed ahead, its stone walls like a fortress against the starry sky. The tower jutted up, its windows empty, but Miss Marple's heart beat faster. Somewhere in that house, something was wrong. She could feel it, like a chill down her spine. They reached the manor's gates, rusted and creaky. Miss Marple pushed them open just enough to slip through, wincing at the faint squeak. The driveway was overgrown, weeds brushing their legs. They moved slowly, sticking to the shadows of the tall hedges. The old well, Lucy had said, was near the back, hidden by ivy. Miss Marple led the way, her flashlight off to avoid being seen. The moonlight was enough, painting the grounds in silver and grey. At the well, they stopped. It was small, its stone rim crumbling, the bucket long gone, ivy draped over it like a curtain, but the dirt around it was fresh, disturbed. Miss Marple knelt, her fingers brushing the soil. "Someone's been digging," she whispered. "Tom, I'd wager." But why here? Lucy crouched beside her, her eyes wide. Maybe he's hiding something. That sack Mrs. Baker saw. Could it be here? Miss Marple nodded, her mind racing. She was about to suggest checking the well when a sound froze them. A door creaking, then footsteps crunching on gravel. They ducked behind the ivy, hearts pounding. A figure emerged from the manor's side door, moving fast. It was Dr. Crane, his long black coat flapping like wings. He carried something, a leather book, clutched tight to his chest. His face was pale, his eyes darting as he hurried to the well. Miss Marple held her breath, pulling Lucy closer. Crane stopped, glancing around, then knelt by the well. He scraped at the dirt, uncovering a small hole. With quick hands, he shoved the book inside, covered it, and patted the soil flat. Then he stood, brushing his hands, and slipped back into the manor, the door shutting softly behind him. Lucy's eyes were huge. "What was that?" she hissed. "Why's he hiding a book?" Miss Marple's lips pursed. "Something he doesn't want found, dear. Let's see what it is." She crept to the well, her fingers digging where Crane had. The soil was loose, and soon she pulled out the book. Its leather worn, but sturdy. She tucked it under her coat and motioned for Lucy to follow. They were about to leave when another sound stopped them. Heavy footsteps, slower, with a limp. Tom Barrow. He came from the stables, a shovel in one hand, his face shadowed. Miss Marple grabbed Lucy's arm, pulling her behind a tree. Tom limped to the well, muttering under his breath. He poked the soil with his shovel, then grunted, satisfied, and walked away, disappearing into the dark. Lucy was trembling, but Miss Marple squeezed her hand. "We're all right, dear. Let's go. Quickly now." They hurried back to the gate, slipping through and running down the hill. The manor faded behind them, its secrets heavier than ever. At Miss Marple's cottage, they locked the door and lit a lamp. The leather book lay on the table, its cover plain but old, smelling of dust. Miss Marple opened it carefully, Lucy leaning over her shoulder. Inside were maps, hand-drawn, with spidery lines and notes in cramped writing. They showed the manor's layout, halls, rooms, the tower. One map marked the study in red ink, with an arrow pointing to a wall. Another showed a line from the study to the tower, labelled passage. Lucy gasped. "A secret passage? Is that real?" Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. "It could be, dear. Old houses like the manor were built with tricks, hidden ways to escape or hide. If this is true, it explains a lot." She traced the passage with her finger. The study was locked when Ashford vanished. But what if he didn't vanish? What if he went through here to the tower? Lucy's face lit up. "And the screams I heard. Someone could be in the tower, trapped. Oh, Miss Marple, we have to check." Miss Marple nodded, but her face was grave. "We will, but not tonight. Crane's hiding this for a reason. He's after something. Maybe the jewels, maybe more. And Tom's part of it, watching the well. We need to be careful." She closed the book, her mind spinning. The maps were a clue, the biggest yet. They tied the study to the tower, the past to the present. She thought of Crane's tools, his nervous hands. Was he trying to break into the passage? And Tom, with his shovel and his limp, was he digging for the jewels or covering Crane's tracks? The screams worried her most. If someone was in the tower, they were in danger. Lucy yawned, her excitement fading. Miss Marple smiled. Off to bed, dear. You've done wonderfully. Tomorrow we'll plan our next step. Bring those binoculars, and we'll watch the manor again. For now, take this. She handed Lucy a small apple from her basket, a reward for her bravery. Lucy grinned, hugging her. Thank you, Miss Marple. I'll be here at dawn. She slipped out, her footsteps fading in the night. Miss Marple locked the door and sat by, the fire, the book open again. She studied the maps, memorizing every line. The passage was key, she was sure. 30 years ago, Ashford had locked his study, leaving no trace. The police found nothing, but they didn't know about a passage. Had Ashford used it to escape, or to hide something? The jewels, perhaps, or a secret worth more than gems? She thought of Lucy's screams. They weren't the wind, not with these maps pointing to the tower. Someone was up there, alive or in trouble. Crane knew, and Tom was helping him, willingly or not. Miss Marple's needles clicked, though she wasn't knitting. She pictured the manor, its dark halls and creaky stairs, the study's lock shining in a dusty house, the well hiding a book, the tower holding a voice. She stood, stretching her arms, and put the book in a drawer, locking it. Tomorrow she'd watch the manor with Lucy, looking for Crane or Tom. She'd also talk to Mrs. Price, who might know if Crane was sending letters, maybe to someone outside the village. Every clue mattered, every whisper a thread in the knot. The fire was out now, the cottage cold. Miss Marple looked out her window, where the manor sat on its hill, black against the stars. It was a puzzle, deep and dangerous, but she was ready. She'd solved mysteries before, small ones like lost rings or stolen pies. This was bigger, darker, with screams and secrets locked in stone. But Miss Marple was patient, like a cat watching a mouse. She'd find the truth, one step at a time. She turned off the lamp and went to bed, the maps vivid in her mind. As she drifted to sleep, she thought of Crane's sharp eyes, Tom's heavy limp, and the tower's empty windows. A mystery was waiting, and she'd meet it head-on, with Lucy by her side and a plan as tight as her knitting. Chapter 5. The Village Allies. The dawn light crept over St. Mary Mead, soft and grey, painting the village in gentle hues. Miss Jane Marple was already awake, her small cottage warm with the glow of a fresh fire. She stood at her kitchen window, a cup of tea steaming in her hands, her sharp eyes fixed on the manor atop the hill. The events of last night weighed on her mind. The leather book of maps, hidden by Dr. Victor Crane near the old well. The secret passage marked from the locked study to the tower, and Lucy Hale's screams echoing from that same tower. The mystery of Lord Ashford's disappearance 30 years ago was unravelling, thread by thread, but it was tangled with danger. Miss Marple knew she couldn't solve it alone. Today she'd gather allies. She sipped her tea, her thoughts as crisp as the morning air. Crane was after something, likely Ashford's missing jewels, hidden somewhere in the manor. Tom Barrow, the groundskeeper with a limp and a grudge, was helping, maybe for money or an old debt. The maps proved the manor held secrets, like the passage to the tower, where someone might be trapped. Miss Marple's lips pursed. She needed help to watch Crane, search the manor, and protect Lucy, whose eager heart made her brave, but reckless. She, dressed in her grey skirt and cardigan, pinning her white hair neatly. Her plan was clear: rally trusted villagers to share the load. Lucy, with her quick ears, was already on board. The vicar, Lucy's father, was kind and steady, with a sharp mind for details. Mrs. Price, the postmistress, knew everyone's business and could spot odd letters or visitors. Together they'd be her eyes and ears, helping her tug at the mystery's loose ends. Miss Marple locked her cottage and stepped into the village. The air smelled of damp earth and baking bread, and St. Mary Mead was stirring. Shopkeepers swept, their steps and early risers nodded as she passed. She headed to the vicarage, where Lucy and her father lived. The house was cosy, with ivy on its walls and a garden of late roses. She knocked and Lucy answered, her freckled face bright despite the early hour. Her brown curls were tucked under a scarf, and her blue eyes sparkled with excitement. "Miss Marple," Lucy said, pulling her inside, "I've been thinking about that book all night. The passage, do you think it's real? Are we going to the manor today?" Her words tumbled out fast as a stream. Miss Marple smiled, patting her arm. "Slow down, dear. We'll get there. But first, I need to talk to your father. Is he in?" Lucy nodded, leading her to the parlour. The vicar, Mr. Hale, sat by the fire, reading a book. His bald head gleamed and his glasses perched on his nose. He looked up, smiling. "Miss Marple, what a treat. Sit, please. Tea?" "No, thank you," she said, settling into a chair. Lucy hovered nearby, eager. "I've come about the manor, Mr. Hale. There's trouble up there, and I need help." The vicar's smile faded. "Trouble? You mean Dr. Crane? The village is full of talk about him." He set his book down, his face serious. Miss Marple nodded, her voice low. "More than talk. Lucy heard screams from the tower, and I've found proof Crane's hiding something." She glanced at Lucy, who nodded eagerly. "Last night we saw him bury a book of maps of the manor, showing a secret passage from the study to the tower. The study where Lord Ashford vanished." The vicar's eyes widened. "A passage! Good heavens! And the screams! Do you think someone's up there?" "I do," Miss Marple said. "Crane's bought tools, chisels, a crowbar. He's searching, maybe for Ashford's jewels. And Tom Barrow's helping, though I don't know why. We need to watch them and search the manor, but carefully. That's why I'm here." Lucy bounced on her toes. "I can help. I'll watch Crane, or talk to people, anything." Miss Marple smiled. "You will, dear, but we need more hands. Mr. Hale, can you join us? And I'd like to bring in Mrs. Price. She sees everything at the post office." The vicar rubbed his chin. "Mrs. Price, yes, she's sharp. I'm in, Miss Marple. This sounds serious. What's the plan?" Miss Marple leaned forward, her eyes bright. "Lucy will keep gathering gossip, Crane's habits, Tom's movements. You and I will search the manor, but we need a way in. I'm thinking Lucy could distract Crane, maybe with a story about a lost cat. Mrs. Price can watch for letters or strangers tied to Crane. We'll meet tonight to share what we find." Lucy clapped her hands. "A lost cat! That's perfect. I'll knock on Crane's door this afternoon. Keep him busy." The vicar nodded. "I'll go with you to the manor, Miss Marple. But what about the tower? If someone's trapped, we can't wait." Miss Marple's face grew grave. "We won't. If we find a way to the tower, we'll check it. But Crane's Clever. And Tom's watching. We must be sneaky. They agreed to meet at Miss Marple's cottage that evening. Lucy ran to fetch Mrs. Price, who lived above the post office. Miss Marple and the vicar stayed in the parlour, sipping tea he insisted on making. "You've a knack for this," he said, his voice warm. "The village trusts you, Jane. If anyone can solve this, it's you." Miss Marple chuckled. "People are like books, Mr. Hale. Read them right, and they tell you everything. Crane's hiding a story, and I mean to read it." Lucy returned with Mrs. Price, a round woman with sharp eyes and a quick tongue. Her grey hair was pinned tight, and her apron smelled of ink. "Miss Marple, what's this about the manor?" she said, sitting heavily. "Lucy says you've got a mystery. I'm not surprised. Crane's a queer one, always skulking." Miss Marple shared the plan, keeping her voice low. She showed Mrs. Price the leather book, its maps spread on the table. Mrs. Price's eyes narrowed. "Secret passages, eh? That manor's full of tricks. And Tom Barrow's no good. I've seen him posting letters to London addressed to a Mr. Black. Never heard of him, but it's fishy." Miss Marple's needles clicked, though she wasn't knitting. "Mr. Black, you say? That's useful, Mrs. Price. Keep an eye on those letters. Names, addresses, anything odd. Crane might be working with someone outside." Mrs. Price nodded, her lips tight. "I will. Nobody sends mail in St. Mary Mead without me knowing. If Crane's up to no good, I'll spot it." Miss Marple smiled. "Thank you. Now, Lucy, you'll visit Crane this afternoon. Mr. Hale and I will slip into the manor while you keep him busy. Mrs. Price, watch the post and the village for strangers. We'll meet tonight to plan our next move." They parted, each with a job to do. Miss Marple walked home, the village bustling now with carts and chatter. The manor loomed on its hill, its tower dark against the clouds. She thought of the maps, the passage, the screams. Crane was digging for something, and Tom was his shadow. The jewels were part of it, but the tower held the real secret. She felt it in her bones. At her cottage, she made a sandwich and sat, by the fire, the leather book open. She studied the passage again, its line from the study to the tower. 30 years ago, Ashford had locked his study, vanishing with his jewels. The police found nothing, but they didn't know about a passage. Had Ashford used it to escape or to hide? And why was Crane so desperate to find it now? The afternoon came, grey and chilly. Lucy arrived, her face flushed with nerves. "I'm ready, Miss Marple. I'll say my cat ran off and asked Crane to help look. That should keep him outside." Mrs. Marple patted her shoulder. "You're brave, dear. Be polite and don't stay too long. We'll be nearby." She and the vicar set off, following Lucy at a distance. The manor's gates creaked as Lucy knocked on the door. Crane appeared, his sharp face puzzled as Lucy spun her tale. He hesitated, then followed her to the garden, looking annoyed but curious. Miss Marple and the vicar slipped through a side gate, their steps quiet. The manor was silent, its windows like closed eyes. They entered through a back door, left unlocked. The hall was dim, smelling of dust and wax. Miss Marple led the way, her flashlight small but bright. They passed the study, its oak door locked tight, the brass gleaming. She paused, listening, but heard nothing. Then from above, a faint creak. Footsteps in the tower. The vicar's face paled. "Someone's up there," he whispered. Miss Marple nodded, her heart quickening. They climbed the tower stairs, narrow and winding. The air grew colder, the walls damp. At the top was a door, heavy and locked with a rusty bolt. The vicar, stronger than he looked, pushed hard, and the bolt gave way with a groan. They stepped inside, and Miss Marple's breath caught. The room was small, bare, but for a cot and a single chair. A tiny window let in moonlight, showing dust motes in the air. The creaking had stopped, but the silence felt heavy, like a held breath. Miss Marple's flashlight swept the room, finding nothing, no person, no clues. Yet the cot's blanket was rumpled, as if someone had sat there recently. "Look," the vicar whispered, pointing to the floor. Scratches marked the stone, leading to the wall. Miss Marple knelt, her fingers tracing the marks. The wall was solid, but the scratches suggested movement. A hidden door, maybe, to the passage. "We need more time," she said, standing. "Crane will be back soon. Let's go." They hurried down, locking the tower door behind them. Outside, Lucy was still with Crane, her voice loud as she called for her cat. Miss Marple and the vicar slipped out, reaching the hill just as Lucy waved goodbye to Crane. Back at the cottage, they gathered around the fire, Lucy bubbling with pride. "He believed me," she said. "Kept looking under bushes, grumbling the whole time." Miss Marple smiled. "Well done, dear. We found something. A room in the tower, empty but used. There's a hidden door, I think, to the passage." She turned to the vicar. "We need to get back in, but Crane's watchful. Any ideas?" The vicar rubbed his chin. "The church has old records of the manor. I could look for plans, see if they mention passages. It might help." Mrs. Price, who joined them, nodded. "I'll check Crane's mail tomorrow. If he's writing to this Mr. Black, I'll know." Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Perfect. We're getting closer. Tomorrow we watch again and plan our next move. This knot's loosening bit by bit." They parted, the night deep and cold. Miss Marple locked her door, the manor's shadow long in her mind. The tower room, the scratches, the passage, they all pointed to a truth Crane wanted hidden. She thought of Lucy's screams, Tom's sack, Crane's tools. The jewels were there, but so was something darker, something alive and afraid. She sat by the fire, the maps open, her needles still. The manor was a puzzle, and she was close to a key piece. Tomorrow she'd tug harder, with her allies by her side. As she went to bed, the tower's empty room stayed in her thoughts, a silent cry for help she wouldn't ignore. Chapter 6. The Tower's Secret. The morning in St. Mary Mead was sharp and cold, with frost sparkling on the grass like tiny diamonds. Miss Jane Marple stood in her cosy cottage, stirring a pot of tea, her mind racing faster than the steam curling. Up! Yesterday had been a whirlwind. Lucy's clever distraction of Dr. Victor Crane, the sneak into the manor, and the discovery of the tower room, empty but marked with scratches hinting at a hidden door. The leather book of maps, stolen from the well, showed a secret passage from the locked study to the tower, tying the manor's past to Lucy's screams. Miss Marple was sure now. Someone was in that tower, and Crane, with his chisels and nervous eyes, was at the heart of it. Today she'd dig deeper, with her village allies by her side. She sipped her tea, her small frame wrapped in a wool shawl. The fire crackled, warming the kitchen, but her thoughts were on the manor, cold and grim on its hill. Crane was after Lord Ashford's jewels, missing since the man vanished 30 years ago, but the screams suggested a darker secret. Tom Barrow, the limping groundskeeper with a grudge, was helping Crane, maybe for money or revenge. The tower room's rumpled blanket and scratched floor pointed to a prisoner, and Miss Marple's heart tightened at the thought. She needed to act fast but carefully. Crane was sly, and Tom was watching. She dressed in her grey skirt and cardigan, pinning her white hair tight. Her plan was bold: return to the tower, find the hidden door, and uncover who or what was there. The vicar, Mr. Hale, was strong enough to help, and Lucy's quick thinking could keep Crane busy again. Mrs. Price, the postmistress, would watch for letters to Mr. Black, Crane's mystery contact. Together they were a team, each pulling a thread of the manor's knot. Miss Marple locked her cottage and stepped into the village. The air smelled of frost and wood smoke, and St. Mary Mead was quiet, its houses snug under the grey sky. She headed to the vicarage where Lucy and her father waited. The vicarage door swung open, and Lucy's freckled face lit up, her brown curls bouncing. "Miss Marple, I've been up for hours, thinking about the tower. Are we going back?" Her blue eyes sparkled, fearless despite the danger. Miss Marple smiled, stepping inside. "We are, dear, but we must be clever. Is your father here?" The vicar appeared, his bald head shining, his glasses low on his nose. He looked worried, but ready, his hands clasped tight. "Jane, I checked the church records last night," he said, sitting in the parlour. "No plans of the manor, but there's talk of old passages built for hiding during wars. The tower was a lookout, with secret ways down. Your maps might be right." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes sharp. "Good. That tower room's the key. We found scratches, maybe from a hidden door. We need to open it, but Crane's in the way." She turned to Lucy. "Can you distract him again? Another lost cat, perhaps?" Lucy grinned. "Easy. I'll say my kitten's stuck in a tree near the manor. He'll have to help or look heartless." She bounced, eager to play her part. Miss Marple patted her arm. "Perfect. Mr. Hale and I will slip in while you keep Crane busy. We'll check the tower and be out fast." She paused, her face serious. "Lucy, if anything feels wrong, run. Promise me." Lucy nodded, her smile softening. "I promise." They left the vicarage, the village waking slowly. Miss Marple and the vicar followed Lucy at a distance, their coats blending with the hedges. The manor loomed ahead, its stone walls grey and heavy, the tower stabbing the sky. Lucy marched to the front door, knocking loudly. Crane answered, his sharp face annoyed, as Lucy spun her tale of a trapped kitten. He hesitated, then followed her to the garden, muttering. Miss Marple and the vicar crept to the side door, left, unlocked as before, and slipped inside. The manor's hall was dim, smelling of dust and old secrets. Miss Marple led the way, her flashlight a thin beam in the gloom. They passed the study, its oak door locked, the brass gleaming like a warning. The tower stairs were narrow, creaking under their steps. Miss Marple's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm, her eyes scanning every shadow. At the top the heavy door waited, its rusty bolt loose from yesterday. The vicar pushed it open, grunting with effort, and they stepped into the tower room. The small space was just as they'd left it. A cot with a rumpled blanket, a chair, a tiny window letting in pale light. Dust hung in the air, and the scratches on the floor led to the wall. But something was different. A faint smell, like sweat and fear. Miss Marple's skin prickled. She knelt by the scratches, her fingers tracing the stone. "There's a door here," she whispered. "Feel the cracks." The vicar nodded, running his hands along the wall. He pressed hard, and a low groan echoed. A section of stone shifted, revealing a narrow gap. Miss Marple's flashlight lit the space, showing a dark passage, its walls damp and tight. But before they could step in, a weak voice rasped from the shadows. "Help! Please!" Miss Marple froze, her breath catching. She swung her light, finding a figure on the cot, hidden by the blanket. It was a man, frail and pale, his wrists chained to the wall. His hair was white, his face lined with pain, but his eyes burned with life. "Who are you?" he croaked. The vicar gasped, but Miss Marple knelt beside the man, her voice gentle. "I'm Jane Marple, and this is Mr. Hale. We're here to help. Who are you?" The man coughed, his voice barely a whisper. "Reginald Ashford, Lord Ashford." He paused, catching his breath. "Crane wants the jewels, keeps me here to force the secret." Miss Marple's mind raced. Ashford, alive after 30 years. The manor's mystery, locked in this tower. She touched his hand, cold as ice. "The jewels! Where are they?" Ashford's eyes flickered. "Hidden in the study. A panel behind the safe. But they're cursed, stolen from a prince. I hid to protect them, faked my death. Crane's his kin found me." He coughed again, weaker now. The vicar, pale but steady, worked at the chains, using a small knife from his pocket. "We'll get you out," he said, his voice firm. Miss Marple helped, her fingers nimble despite her age. The chains were old, rusted, and gave way with a snap. Ashford slumped, too weak to stand, but alive. Miss Marple's thoughts spun. Crane, a descendant of the prince, had tracked Ashford, imprisoning him to find the jewels. Tom Barrow, bribed or blackmailed, was his muscle. The screams Lucy heard were Ashford's, crying for help. The maps, the tools, the locked study, it all fit. But Crane would notice Ashford's absence soon. They had to move. "We can't stay," she said, helping the vicar lift Ashford. "Crane will check the tower. We'll hide him at the vicarage, then plan our trap." The vicar nodded, his face set. They supported Ashford, his frail body light but heavy with secrets, and crept down the stairs. The manor was silent, but every creak felt like a shout. They slipped out the side door, hurrying to the hill where Lucy waited. Lucy's eyes widened at the sight of Ashford, but she kept quiet, helping them down the path. The vicarage was close, its windows dark. They settled Ashford in a spare room, where the vicar's wife, alerted by a quick note, brought blankets and broth. Ashford ate slowly, his strength returning, but his eyes were haunted. "Crane's ruthless," he warned. "He'll kill for those jewels." Miss Marple nodded, her face calm, but her mind blazing. "He won't get the chance. We'll stop him, but we need time." She turned to Lucy. "You were brilliant, dear. Now, go to Mrs. Price. Tell her we've found Ashford and need her help. We meet tonight." Lucy ran off, her scarf flapping. Miss Marple and the vicar sat with Ashford, piecing together his story. 30 years ago, he'd stolen the jewels from a foreign prince, a man with dangerous enemies. Fearing revenge, Ashford faked his disappearance, locking the study and using the passage to hide in the tower. He'd planned to escape later, but illness and fear kept him there, living on stored food and water. Crane, the prince's descendant, had found him through old letters, bribing Tom to keep quiet. For months Crane had pressed Ashford for the jewels' hiding place, using threats and chains. Miss Marple listened, her needles clicking in her mind. The jewels were in the study, behind a panel. Crane's tools were for breaking in, his maps, a guide to the passage. Tom's role was clear, guarding the well, watching the village. But Mr. Black, the name on Crane's letters, was still a shadow. An ally? A boss? She'd find out. The day passed, the village unaware of the secret in the vicarage. Mrs. Price arrived at dusk, her sharp eyes wide as she heard Ashford's tale. "Letters to Mr. Black went out yesterday," she said. "No return address, but I copied the postmark, London. Crane's not alone." Miss Marple nodded. "We need to trap him, and fast. If he checks the tower and finds Ashford gone, he'll run, or worse." She paused, her eyes gleaming. "Here's what we'll do. We'll spread a rumour that Ashford's body was found in the manor. Crane and Tom will come to check, and we'll have the police waiting." The vicar frowned. "The police? Will they believe us?" Miss Marple smiled. "They will when they see Ashford. Mr. Hale, can you call Inspector Reed? He's a friend, and he'll listen. Mrs. Price, start the rumour. Tell Mrs. Baker she'll spread it like wildfire. Lucy, you're our lookout. Watch the manor, but stay hidden." They agreed, their faces set. Mrs. Price left to gossip, and the vicar phoned the inspector, his voice low. Lucy grabbed her binoculars, promising to stay safe. Miss Marple stayed, with Ashford, her mind spinning. The jewels, the passage, the screams. It was all clear now, but Crane was dangerous. One wrong move, and he'd slip away. Night fell, cold and dark. Miss Marple sat by the vicarage fire, the leather book open. The maps were her proof, tying Crane to the tower. She thought of Tom, his limp and his grudge. Was he loyal to Crane, or just greedy? And Mr. Black, who was he, pulling strings from London? She'd know soon. The village buzzed with the rumour, Mrs. Baker's voice carrying it to every shop. Miss Marple pictured Crane, hearing the news, his sharp face paling. He'd go to the manor, she was sure, with Tom at his side. The police would be ready, hidden in the shadows. She thought of Lucy, watching from the hill, her brave heart steady despite the dark. Miss Marple stood, her shawl tight around her. The manor was a knot, almost untied. Ashford was safe, but Crane was loose, a fox with a trap closing in. She'd tug the final thread tomorrow, with her allies and the law. As she helped the vicar's wife settle Ashford, she thought of the tower's cold room, the scratches, the chains. A man had suffered there, and she'd make it right. She left the vicarage, the night deep and still. The manor sat on its hill, its tower black against the stars. Miss Marple's eyes gleamed, her mind as sharp as her needles. The mystery was hers now, and she'd finish it for Ashford, for Lucy, for St. Mary Mead. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. The evening sky over St. Mary Mead was heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. Miss Jane Marple sat in her cottage, the fire casting a warm glow across her cosy parlour. Her knitting lay untouched, her sharp mind weaving a plan tighter than any scarf. The rescue of Lord Ashford from the Manor's tower had changed everything. His frail voice, telling of stolen jewels and Dr. Victor Crane's cruel quest, had unravelled the mystery's core. Crane, a descendant of the prince whose gems Ashford hid, had kept the old man chained, pressing for the jewel's hiding place. Tom Barrow, the bitter groundskeeper, was his hired hand, guarding secrets for a price. Now, with Ashford safe at the vicarage, Miss Marple was ready to spring her trap. Tonight, she'd end this. She sipped her tea, her small frame steady despite the weight of the task. The leather book of maps, stolen from the well, lay open on her table, its passage from the locked study to the tower marked in red. Ashford's words echoed. The jewels were hidden in the study, behind a panel. Cranes, tools, chisels, a crowbar were for breaking in, his nervous eyes proof of his greed. Lucy's screams, heard nights ago, were Ashford's cries, and Tom's heavy sack, seen by Mrs. Baker, likely held tools or dirt from his digging. Mrs. Price's report of letters to Mr. Black in London hinted at a bigger web, but Miss Marple focused on Crane. He was the knot's centre, and she'd pull the thread to unravel him. Her plan was simple but daring. Spread a rumour that Ashford's body was found in the manor, luring Crane and Tom to the study. The police, led by Inspector Reed, would hide nearby, ready to pounce. Lucy, the vicar, and Mrs. Price were her allies, each with a role. Lucy would watch the manor, her binoculars sharp. The vicar would guide the police, his steady voice calming their doubts. Mrs. Price would fan the rumour, her gossip spreading like wildfire. Miss Marple would wait in the study, the bait in her own trap, trusting her wits to outsmart Crane. She stood, pulling on her dark coat and scarf. The village was quiet, its houses snug under the cloudy sky. She locked her cottage and walked to the vicarage where her team waited. The air smelled of rain and earth, the manor looming on its hill like a sleeping giant. At the vicarage, Lucy opened the door, her freckled face pale but eager. "Miss Marple, is it time? I've got my binoculars ready." Her brown curls bounced, her blue eyes bright despite the late hour. Miss Marple smiled, stepping inside. "It's time, dear. You've been brave, and I need you one more time. Where's your father?" The vicar appeared, his bald head shining, his glasses fogged with worry. Mrs. Price was there too, her round face set, her sharp eyes glinting. In a back room, Ashford rested, his frail form wrapped in blankets, his strength growing, but his fear still raw. The vicar clasped his hands. "Inspector Reed's on his way, Jane. I told him about Ashford, the tower, the jewels. He's bringing men, but he's sceptical. A 30-year-old case solved by a village lady. He'll need proof." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes twinkling. "He'll have it, Mr. Hale. Ashford's alive, and the jewels are in the study. Crane will come tonight, I'm sure. Mrs. Price, is the rumour out?" Mrs. Price grinned, her lips tight. "Oh, it's out. I told Mrs. Baker an hour ago. Body found in the manor. Can you believe it? She's told half the village by now. Crane will hear, mark my words." Miss Marple turned to Lucy. You're our lookout, dear. Stay on the hill, hidden in the hedges. Watch the manor's door. If Crane or Tom moves, run to the vicarage and tell the inspector. Can you do that?" Lucy nodded, clutching her binoculars. "I won't let you down, Miss Marple." Her voice was firm, her young heart fearless. Miss Marple patted her arm. "I know you won't. Now, Mr. Hale, you'll meet the police at the manor's gate. Show them where to hide, behind the stables, out of sight. I'll be in the study waiting. Mrs. Price, keep an eye on the village. If anyone else comes, this Mr. Black maybe, let us know." They parted, each with a job to do. Miss Marple and the vicar headed to the manor, the night dark and damp. Lucy slipped to the hill, her small form vanishing in the shadows. Mrs. Price stayed at the vicarage, watching the road. The manor's gates creaked as Miss Marple pushed them open, her sensible shoes quiet on the gravel. The vicar's face was pale, but he followed, his trust in her stronger than his fear. Inside, the manor was cold, its halls smelling of dust and secrets. Miss Marple led the way to the study, her flashlight a thin beam. The oak door was locked, as always, its brass gleaming. She pulled a hairpin from her bun, her fingers nimble as she worked the lock. It clicked open, surprising the vicar. "Jane, where'd you learn that?" he whispered. Miss Marple chuckled. "Old houses, old tricks, Mr. Hale. Now, help me inside." They stepped in, the room heavy with history. A desk stood in the corner, covered in dust. Bookshelves lined the walls, their tomes untouched. The safe, where Ashford's jewels once sat, was built into the wall, its door rusted shut. Miss Marple's eyes scanned the room, landing on a panel beside the safe, its edges slightly uneven. "That's it," she said, pointing. "Ashford's hiding place. The jewels are there, but we'll let Crane find them." She settled in a chair, her small frame calm, but her mind alert. The vicar left to meet the police, his footsteps fading. Miss Marple was alone, the study silent but for the tick of an old clock. She thought of Crane, his sharp face and trembling hands. He'd come, driven by greed, and Tom would follow, his limp echoing in the dark. Outside, Lucy crouched in the hedges, her binoculars trained on the manor. The village buzzed with the rumour, Mrs. Baker's voice carrying it to every ear. Crane, in his rented cottage nearby, heard it, his eyes narrowing. He grabbed his coat and tools, his mind racing. A body? Impossible, unless Ashford had died in the tower. He needed to check, to secure the jewels before the police swarmed. He called Tom, his voice low, and they met at the manor's gate, unaware of Lucy's watchful eyes. Miss Marple waited, her flashlight off, the moonlight filtering through a cracked window. Footsteps approached, 2 sets, one quick, one heavy with a limp. The study door creaked open, and Crane stepped in, his crowbar glinting. Tom followed, his face hard, a shovel in hand. They froze, seeing Miss Marple in the chair, her face calm, her eyes like steel. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice steady. "Looking for something?" Crane's face twisted, his crowbar rising. "You! How did you— Where's Ashford?" His voice was sharp, his hands shaking. Miss Marple tilted her head. "Safe, Dr. Crane. You're too late. Ashford's alive, and the jewels are found. The police know everything. Your maps, your chains, your Mr. Black." She stood, small but fierce, her words cutting like a knife. Tom's eyes darted, his shovel lowering. "Police! Victor, you said this was clean. I'm not going down for you." His voice cracked, his loyalty thin. Crane sneered, stepping closer. "Shut up, Tom. She's bluffing. An old lady alone. We'll deal with her, then find the jewels." He raised the crowbar, his eyes wild, but before he could swing, the door burst open. Inspector Reed and 3 officers rushed in, their lanterns blinding. "Drop it, Crane!" Reed shouted, his gun steady. Crane froze, his crowbar clattering to the floor. Tom dropped his shovel, hands up, his face pale. "I didn't know he was keeping a man up there," he blurted. "Crane paid me to watch, to dig, to keep quiet. Said the jewels were his by right." Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice calm. "And the jewels, Tom? Where are they?" She pointed to the panel, its edges clear in the lantern light. Tom swallowed, his eyes on the police. There, Crane knew. Ashford told him, under duress. "I was just the help, I swear." Reed nodded, his men cuffing Crane and Tom. An officer pried open the panel, revealing a small cavity. Inside sparkled the jewels, diamonds, rubies, emeralds gleaming like stars. Miss Marple looked at them, her face soft but sad. "Beautiful," she said, "but they've cost too much. Greed lies, a man's life stolen for years." Crane glared, his sharp face defiant. "They're mine, my family's, stolen by Ashford. I was taking what's owed." His voice broke, his greed laid bare. Reed shook his head, leading them out. "Tell it to the judge, Crane. You're done." The police took the jewels, sealing them for evidence. Miss Marple followed, her small frame steady in the chaos. Outside, Lucy ran up, her binoculars swinging. "Miss Marple, you did it!" She hugged her, her face alight. Miss Marple smiled, patting her curls. "We did it, dear. You, your father, Mrs. Price, all of us." The vicar joined them, his face relieved, and Mrs. Price arrived, her gossip now truth. The manor stood silent, its secrets spilled at last. Back at the vicarage, Ashford wept when told Crane was caught. "Thank you," he whispered, his frail hands gripping Miss Marple's. "I thought I'd die in that tower." She nodded, her eyes kind but firm. The jewels, she knew, would go back to their rightful owner, the prince's kin, closing a circle of theft and pain. The night deepened, the village settling. Miss Marple walked home, the rain starting to fall, soft and clean. She thought of Crane's wild eyes, Tom's weak excuses, Ashford's chains. The manor's knot was untied, its threads laid bare. Mr. Black, whoever he was, would wait. Crane's letters would lead the police to him. For now, St. Mary Mead was safe. She unlocked her cottage, the fire low but warm. The leather book sat on her table, its maps a reminder of the puzzle she'd solved. She thought of Lucy's bravery, the vicar's strength, Mrs. Price's sharp ears. They were her village, her home, and she'd protected them, as always. Miss Marple sat, picking up her knitting. The needles clicked, steady as her heart. The manor's shadow was gone, its tower just stone now. She smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and worked on her shawl, the mystery behind her, the village ahead. Chapter 8. The Village Restored. The morning sun broke through the clouds over St. Mary Mead, casting a golden glow on the village's cosy houses and winding lanes. Frost sparkled on the grass, and the air smelled of wood smoke and fresh bread. Miss Jane Marple sat in her cottage garden, a soft pink shawl draped over her shoulders, her knitting needles clicking in a steady rhythm. The manor mystery was solved, its dark secrets laid bare last night in a tense trap that caught Dr. Victor Crane and Tom Barrow. Lord Ashford, freed from his tower prison, was safe at the vicarage, and his stolen jewels were with the police, ready to be returned to their rightful owners. The village was at peace, but Miss Marple's sharp mind still turned over the details, tying up loose ends like a perfect knot in her yarn. She sipped her tea, her small frame calm in the wicker chair. The manor on the hill, once a shadow of fear, looked quiet now, its stone walls warmed by the sun. Crane, with his sharp eyes and greedy heart, was in jail, his plan to steal Ashford's jewels undone. Tom, the limping groundskeeper, had confessed his part, paid by Crane to guard the well and keep silent about the chained man in the tower. The leather book of maps, with its secret passage from the study to the tower, was proof of Crane's scheme, and Inspector Reed had taken it, along with the jewels, to close the 30-year-old case. Mrs. Price's letters to Mr. Black hinted at a bigger web, but that was for the police now. Miss Marple's work was done. She thought of her allies, Lucy Hale, the vicar's brave daughter, whose screams had sparked the hunt, Mr. Hale, steady and strong, who'd helped free Ashford, and Mrs. Price, the postmistress, whose gossip spread the rumour that lured Crane to his downfall. They were her village, her strength, and together they'd untangled a knot of greed, lies and pain. Miss Marple smiled, her eyes twinkling like the frost. People were like her knitting. Pull the right thread, and the pattern showed itself. The garden gate squeaked, and Lucy ran in, her freckled face bright, her brown curls bouncing under a green scarf. "Miss Marple," she called, plopping onto the bench beside her. "You won't believe it. The whole village is talking about you. Mrs. Baker says you're a hero, and Mr. Gibbs at the hardware shop wants to give you free nails for life." Her blue eyes sparkled, her voice bubbling with excitement. Miss Marple chuckled, setting her knitting in her lap. "Nails, dear. I don't think I'll need those, but I'm glad the village is happy. How's your father and Lord Ashford?" Lucy leaned closer, her scarf trailing. "Papa's fine, though he's still shocked we found Ashford alive. He's been telling everyone at church how clever you are. Ashford's better, eating soup and talking now. He says he'll go to London soon, to give the jewels back to the prince's family. He's sorry, you know, for stealing them. Says they brought nothing but trouble." Miss Marple nodded, her face soft but thoughtful. "They did, dear. Jewels, like that, beautiful but heavy with greed. Ashford's learned his lesson, I think. He's lucky to be free." Lucy's eyes widened. "Free because of you? Oh, Miss Marple, how did you know? The maps, the passage, Crane's plan. Nobody else figured it out, not even the police." Miss Marple's needles clicked, though she wasn't knitting. "People are like puzzles, Lucy. Watch them, listen, and they tell you who they are. Crane's shaky hands, Tom's hard eyes, your screams, they were pieces. I just put them together." She patted Lucy's hand, her smile warm. "You helped, dear. your courage, your sharp ears. None of this would have happened without you." Lucy blushed, tugging her scarf. "I just did what you said, but it was exciting. Sneaking to the well, distracting Crane, watching from the hill, I felt like a detective." She paused, her face serious. "Will there be more mysteries, Miss Marple? I want to help again." Miss Marple laughed, a soft sound like bells. "Oh, St. Mary Mead always has a mystery or two. Lost cats, missing pies. But big ones like this? I hope not for a while. You'll have plenty to do, dear, growing up, and keeping those eyes sharp." Lucy grinned, hugging her. "I will, thanks, Miss Marple." She jumped up, then hesitated. "Can I tell everyone you're the best detective ever?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Tell them I'm just an old lady who listens, dear. Now, run along. Your father will want you for lunch." Lucy waved, her scarf flapping, and darted through the gate, her laughter echoing. Miss Marple leaned back, her tea cooling. The village was buzzing, she knew. Mrs. Baker's bakery, Mr. Gibbs's shop, the post office where Mrs. Price sorted letters with a smug grin. They'd talk for weeks about the manor, Crane's arrest, Ashford's return. She didn't mind. Gossip was the village's heartbeat, and she'd given it a story to thrum with. She thought of Ashford, frail but alive, his 30 years in the tower, a heavy price for his theft. He'd faked his death, locked the study, and hidden in the passage, fearing the prince's revenge. The jewels, stashed behind a panel, were his secret, but Crane, the prince's kin, had found him, using chains and threats. Tom, owed wages from Ashford's time, took Crane's money to stay quiet, his grudge making him weak. Miss Marple sighed. Greed was a cruel master, turning men into shadows of themselves. The manor was empty now, its gates locked, its tower silent. Inspector Reed had called that morning, his voice gruff but kind. "You've done it again, Miss Marple," he'd said. "Crane's talking, blaming Tom. Tom's blaming Crane. The jewels are safe, and Ashford's free. We're chasing this Mr. Black, likely a fence in London. You've saved us years of work." She'd smiled, saying little. The police had their job, and she had hers. Watching, listening, knitting the village together. She stood, brushing a leaf from her shawl, and went inside. The cottage was warm, its lace curtains soft in the light. She set her tea on the table, next to the newspaper from 30 years ago. Its headline faded. "Lord Ashford vanishes." She'd kept it, a reminder of the puzzle she'd solved. The leather book was gone, with the police, but she remembered its maps, the passage's spidery lines, the study, the tower, the well. They were chapters in a story now closed. The village moved on, its rhythm steady. Children played in the square, their shouts bright. Mrs. Baker's bakery smelled of fresh rolls, and Mr. Gibbs hammered in his shop. Miss Marple walked to the post office, her basket light without apples. Mrs. Price greeted her, her round face beaming. "Jane, you're the talk of the town. Solved a mystery nobody could, and not a hair out of place." She leaned over the counter, her voice low. "Any more secrets up your sleeve?" Miss Marple chuckled. "Not today, Mrs. Price. Just here for stamps. Any news on those letters?" Mrs. Price's eyes gleamed. "Police took 'em. Said they're tracing Mr. Black. Crane sent 3 letters last week, all to the same London box. Sneaky, but not sneaky enough for you." She handed over the stamps, her grin wide. "You're a marvel, Jane." Miss Marple smiled, tucking the stamps in her basket. "Just a nosy old lady, dear. Keep those eyes sharp." She left, the bell jingling behind her. The village square was lively, with carts rattling and dogs barking. She nodded to passers-by, their waves warm, their whispers proud. "That's Miss Marple," she heard a boy say. "She caught the bad man." She kept walking, her face calm but her heart full. Back home, she made lunch, a sandwich and more tea, and sat by the fire. The manor was for sale, she'd heard, its dark days done. Ashford, recovering, had written to the prince's family, offering the jewels and his apology. They'd accepted, granting him amnesty, and he'd stay in St. Mary Mead until spring, healing in the vicarage's quiet. Miss Marple was glad. The village had room for second chances, even for a man who'd hidden so long. She thought of Lucy, her eager helper, who'd grow up with this story in her heart. The girl would be fine, sharp and kind, maybe a detective herself one day. The boy, vicar too, had grown, his faith in Miss Marple stronger than ever. Mrs. Price would keep gossiping, her post office the village's pulse. They were her people, her home, and she'd guarded them, as always. The afternoon passed, the sun dipping low. Miss Marple walked to the vicarage, her basket now full of muffins for Ashford. Lucy answered, her face alight. "He's awake. Come, see." They went to the back room, where Ashford sat by a window, his white hair neat, his eyes clearer. He stood shaky but strong, and took Miss Marple's hand. "You saved me," he said, his voice rough. "I'll never forget it." Miss Marple smiled, setting the muffins down. "You're welcome, Lord Ashford. Rest now. The village is yours again." They talked a while, Lucy chattering about the arrest, the jewels, the police. Ashford listened, his face soft, his guilt easing with every word. As dusk fell, Miss Marple left, the village settling into evening. Lights glowed in windows, and the manor's shadow was gone, its tower just stone. She thought of Crane's wild eyes, Tom's weak confession, Ashford's chains. The jewels had sparkled, but their cost, years of pain, a man's lost life, was too high. She'd seen it before, in smaller ways. Greed over a stolen ring, lies over a lost letter. People were the same, big or small, and she knew them, heart and soul. At her cottage she lit the fire, its warmth chasing the chill. The newspaper lay, folded, the leather book's memory sharp. She picked up her knitting, the needles clicking like a heartbeat. Lucy's voice echoed, calling her a hero, but Miss Marple shook her head. Heroes were loud, bold. She was quiet, watching, listening. The village was her puzzle, and she'd solved it piece by piece. Winter was coming, the air crisp, the days short. St. Mary Mead would buzz with new gossip. Weddings, babies, maybe a lost dog. Miss Marple would be there, in her garden, her needles moving, her eyes sharp. The manor was past, its mystery, a story for firesides. She thought of Ashford's frail hand, Lucy's bright smile, the jewel's cold shine. Life was the real treasure she knew, and she'd guard it, always. She finished a row, folding her shawl. The fire crackled, the cottage warm. Outside, the Dulce village slept, safe under the stars. Miss Marple smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. and turned off the lamp. The mystery behind her, the future ahead.